Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So I'd like to begin just by taking a few minutes to settle into the space together. And it turns out we have a way to do that, which is first to come into the body. So Suzuki Roshi says, you might think that when we give you all these posture instructions, we're trying to control you or tell you what to do, but the point is to align our body, to feel deep in the low belly, a little bit of energy, to ground into the deep belly, base of the spine, to extend up through the trunk, the top of the back of the head extending up, the chin for many of us, a little bit in, organizing, aligning the body in this way. Then the breath can drop down into the low belly, where it likes to be. So it's not that we're pushing the breath into the low belly, but just reminding the breath that it can flow all the way out from the low belly and all the way into the low belly. Can be calm and deep and smooth and strong. And then we have this practice of, letting go of whatever we could let go of that's in our mind. So it's okay, if you can't let go of something, then you can't let go of it. But there's probably something that you could let go of in your mind. So to just focus on the feeling of the breathing and letting the mind really quiet down. Just letting go of thinking for a minute. And what's the point of that? Why would we do such a thing? So we come into our body and we calm our mind, and then we open our eyes and we take in this field of light and sound and aliveness. And we're open and intimate with it. Does that make sense? Suzuki Roshi says, really, this is, when our mind is full of all this stuff, it's not that the stuff is a problem. He says it's kind of like a sandwich wrapper, your thoughts. They're good while you need them. The wrapper is pretty good to get the sandwich home. But then once the sandwich is home and you've eaten it, you really don't need the wrapper anymore. You can let go of that thought from a moment ago. You probably don't need it anymore. And that doesn't mean the thought was bad or Zen people don't like thoughts. It just means what we actually like is to be intimate with the feeling of being alive here. And that if we're thinking about something other than that, it's kind of in the way. So to come into our body and settle our mind and then open our eyes and feel, he calls it sharing the feeling of this being alive with everything. And if you've wondered what Zen is, that's what he says. The founder of our school here tells us right at the start of becoming yourself, sharing the feeling we have right here, right now, is the fundamental thing for Zen practice. Zen is, in a word, to share our feeling with people, with trees, and with mountains, wherever we are. That is Zen practice. And he says, usually our mind is so full of other things that we're not able to really feel how it feels to be where we are. He says, because we have so much useless rubbish in our mind, again, it wasn't rubbish while you were using it, but now it is. Because we have so much useless rubbish in our mind, it is hard to share our feeling with people, with things, with trees, or with mountains. Even though we are right in the middle of the woods, it is still hard to appreciate the feeling of the woods, of this zendo, wherever you are. When we can really appreciate the feeling of the woods, that's zazen. That's what our meditation practice is, to be intimate and share in the feeling of the space that we're in and the people we're with. And so we're doing that right now. Seeing, if we can tolerate the intimacy, really sharing this feeling of being alive together. We are each other's life, So thank you for including me in your life for a little while now, and thank you, Galen, for the kind words, introduction. It's wonderful to be here. Around the San Francisco Bay Area, people know me as one of the abbots of San Francisco Zen Center. And I think around here I'm better known as Hondo Dave's little brother. So my big brother, also a Zen priest and teacher and student of Galen's. So as Galen said, I'm here in part to share about this book, Becoming Yourself, which San Francisco Zen Center just released. It's the first new book of Suzuki Roshi's teachings in over 20 years. And it's kind of a milestone for us at Zen Center. And for me personally, it's been a big heart project, really, of this kind of intimate work with my teacher. Some of you knew Sojun Mel Weitsman. He died in 2021 after having invited me to do this work with him on some editing and compiling some bits of Suzuki Roshi's teachings that over the years had stood out to Mel. Mel was ordained by Suzuki Roshi and really felt close with him and his teaching. And does everybody know who Suzuki Roshi was? Sort of, maybe some of you have read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Really, as Galen said, one of the most important people, really, in the transmission of living meditation practice into the West. So the thing about Suzuki Roshi that maybe if you've read his words, they're kind of like a bottomless well. They're open and they're simple and they're deep, and you can just keep coming back to them again and again. So people often say, you read it every few years, and every time, it's meeting you where you're at. Each line is a whole lifetime, really, of practice. And in the many years now of working on this book, I've talked about many of the lines. I've given whole Dharma talks on various lines and paragraphs. And now today I want to tell you about the whole book. And you see all my little notes here. And each line, is a whole Dharma talk. So settle in. And then, so that was my main plan for today, is to completely express every line of this book. And then I was reminded not too long ago that also Galen had asked that I should speak today in order to kind of be whole with the series that's happening here about the teaching of Dogen Zenji, our 13th century Soto Zen founder in Japan, that I should talk about a kind of obscure text of Dogen Zenji as well. And if you've been in classes or talks about Dogen, it's not unusual for an hour class to not get past the title. Actually, even the whole 6-week class sometimes, just the title is enough. So if you want to go ahead and cancel, your afternoon plans as well. I did have a moment of thinking, well, we just put the dog up here, or or we could just sit, If we can actually come into our body and quiet our mind and open our eyes and feel what it feels like to be alive here together, from the inside, not forget your ideas about it, who you think you are and who you are in relation to others, but this embodied, immediate, totally ungraspable, unknowable feeling of being alive. And that everything that's happening in everything, everyone, everything we encounter, everything that could possibly be encountered is just that life, It just is our life. If we could sit in this way, as we are, that manifests, the whole point of all these words and teachings. They're all just pointing us back to that. Come into your body, quiet your mind, and open to the actual feeling of being alive right now. In that feeling of being alive right now, it's obvious, it's just manifest that everything is your life. There's nothing other than your life, There's nothing outside of that that's like intruding or imposing or obstructing. Everything is just your life. So yeah, this text that Galen asked me to discuss was, it's called Shoaku Makusa, do no evil, or refrain from evil. So I'll maybe say a little bit about that. In order to honor that request. And because it's our fundamental practice. So basically, connecting with life itself, just you're being alive right now, and the way that everything is included in that. And actually nothing can really be said about this being a live thing. We don't really know what it is. And that could be a little awkward to notice, or to mention. We don't really know what's going on, right? We don't actually know what our life is. We have we think we do. We have lots of ideas about it. But the actual feeling of being alive, you can't actually grasp onto it. You can't really get a hold of it. It's kind of, it's boundless and it's unthinkable, really, and inexpressible. You can't capture it. And it's a kind of principle in our Zen practice that the judgments and discriminations that we make are have their place, but they don't actually touch this shared reality of the being alive. So we have all these names and words for what's happening here, and those are good, and we get used to working with them and be responsible to them, but they don't really meet what the being alive thing is. Somehow the truth of our life is like below all of our ideas or judgments about it. And one of the main judgments that we have is like there's some good stuff and there's some evil stuff. Does that sound familiar? And there's some good people and some evil people, and like we're pretty committed to that. The world like has these different parts, and there's like different things happening. There's good things and evil things. And then Zen is asking us to be in this kind of, to at least have a ground in or a belly in this kind of, the oneness, you could say, the ungraspable oneness of the being alive. So on the one hand, to say something is good and something is evil is delusion, and that's what we're not so into. And so to carve the world up into good and evil is kind of like evil thing to do, and so we shouldn't do it. So on the one hand, the most important thing for our practice is not to do evil, and then on the other hand, to think that there's good and evil is like evil. So how do we move in that kind of koan or paradox or in that tension? And so Dogen Zenji, in his way, is lifting that up. And does that make sense, what I'm expressing? We want to be free of judgment, so that we can be whole and do good. But it's kind of a mixed signal, you know. It's like, don't have any idea of good and evil, and now the most important thing is to do good and not evil. The cutting up of the world you know, the moving out of this just intimacy where everything is our own life, everything is this shared life. And cutting that up is not a good ground for our activity. That's kind of actually the root of harmful activity. So, what I've discovered, you know, studying Suzuki Roshi, and this was confirmed recently. I was talking with Kaz Tanahashi, who's a translator of Dogen, and also was a friend of Suzuki Roshi. And he said, you know, when he first met Suzuki Roshi, and there were a couple things that made him think Suzuki Roshi didn't understand Dogen, didn't know anything about Dogen, really. The first thing that happened is Suzuki Roshi asked Kaz to give a talk about Dogen. And then Kaz was like, well, you know, I would, but I don't have a copy of the text with me. And Suzuki said, no problem, I have a copy. So then Kaz looked at his copy and he felt like, I don't think this has ever been opened before. I don't think this guy has ever, and some of you maybe can relate if you have a copy of Shobogenzo. You don't have to raise your hands, but you know, if you loaned it to someone, would they feel like, wow, you've really studied the Shobogenzo? Would they feel like, wow, this is like, what is it, you know, like new? So he never talked about Dogen, and the Shobogenzo was like a little too crisp to be credible. But then he started really listening to Suzuki Roshi's teaching and reading Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and actually saw that Suzuki Roshi had totally processed Dogen Zenji's teaching and was sharing it in this very straightforward way. Actually, Suzuki Roshi had studied with one of the great scholars of Dogen, Kishizawa Ian Roshi, in his training. So then Kaz came around. So the way I'd say, you know, that Dogen Zenji and Suzuki Roshi's teaching about how to live in harmony with each other, how to avoid evil and practice what is good, is how to embody and really actualize in the world our love for each other, is to become ourselves. How will we refrain from evil? By becoming ourselves. So when I was reminded of this refrain from evil fascicle, the first thing I remembered was at Tassajara, where we do these intensive kind of monastic style retreats. Sometimes in the middle of the 90-day practice period, there's a skit night, and there was a skit night where somebody said, you know, they had discovered a new text by Dogen Zenji, and it was called "Refrain from Fun." It was a funny presentation, you know. She had really done the whole kind of Dogen thing, refrain from fun, and it landed, right? Because you might come in and feel like, I think they have a rule here. It seems I'm intuiting that there's some kind of rule here of like refrain from fun. There's something is being kind of like thwarted. Something is being stifled a little bit in the kind of, you know, in the jaws of the people who populate Zen centers, you know. Gets a little grim, and maybe you felt, not here at Houston. I've heard that at other places, people sometimes come in and say, it seems like people have agreed not to have fun. And so you know, we're here to like do something deep and important and find our true self, which is one with everything, and that's like serious. So the feeling of refrain from evil like refrain from evil, don't you feel a little bit squashed? Like I wasn't even about to do some evil, but now I feel kind of like something from outside is thwarting me. And then the precepts, you read the kind of do not do evil, refrain from evil is the first of this kind of list of precepts that then has all kinds of stuff not to do. Like not to kill and not to steal, not to lie, not to separate from others, not to put others down, not to talk bad about Buddhism. All these kinds of things that just feel like, yeah, don't have fun. You might as well just throw that one in, It's like all this stuff not to do, as though something that I want to do is being squelched. And I think that's the kind of like natural way to hear something like refrain from evil. And that's a natural way to hear things like do not kill, do not steal, etc. And so in this book, about becoming yourself, a main theme of it is how to live out the Bodhisattva precepts. We have this kind of longing or this call or this nature that wants to live in harmony and support others. And so how do we do that? And Suzuki Roshi is pointing again and again to this. The way to do that isn't to like squash something in yourself by using some rules outside of yourself to squash some badness that you are, but actually to become who you actually are. To become who you actually are, which is innately loving and totally intimate with everything. That's how to refrain from evil. It's not refraining from anything. It's being your actual self, which is love and intimacy. It's not separation. So this kind of theme of becoming yourself is like, it's so wonderful aspect of Suzuki Roshi's teaching. What is our practice of Zazen? Is to just sit being yourself. That's nice. I don't know what Zazen instruction happens here, maybe a little more detailed than that, but really it's like, okay, in every other realm of your life, you may feel like there's something to be and some way to do this right and wrong. But sitting, facing the wall, you just be what you are. Just be what you are. It's very subtle. And then we say, well, how do I do that? Am I doing it right? It's like, stop. Just be how you are. We can't, it's just so, we're so used to, well, you don't mean this thing. I mean, maybe for somebody that works, but you don't know me, I need something more than that. But just face the wall and be yourself. So our Zazen practice, our sitting, is just this being yourself. What a relief. And then the precept practice, how we support each other, is also just being your actual authentic self, just being yourself. That's how we observe all of this list of rules about how to be a good person. What this self is, maybe I'll just say, because this is an important part, some people say, well, I thought there was no self in Buddhism. That's a good point. That's kind of what he means, Be yourself has all the dimensions. Be yourself, it's rich, it's open. It means, be who you are. Don't try to be anything other than you are. And of course you want to be better, that's part of who you are. It's not like, but if I was just myself, I would just start, be total hedonist, cruel to everyone. It's like, no, you wouldn't. You being yourself, you have this natural wish to be better and to support others. That wouldn't be cut off if you were yourself. That would actually be clarified and blossom if you're just yourself. The self mostly that he means is when we're really ourself, and this gets a little hard to talk about, it includes everything. And that's kind of like this thing of being of Zazen or meditation, being ourself in a way that is free of our ideas about it. So maybe I can share just a little bit about what he says about this. When you become you yourself, at that moment your practice includes everything. Whatever it is, there's a part of you. It is a part of you. You practice with everyone in the future and in the past. That is our practice. But when you do not become yourself, it doesn't happen in that way. When you sit, you are sitting with everything, including animate and inanimate beings. If your practice doesn't include everything, it is not real practice. So just sitting, just being this aliveness, everything in the field of that aliveness is just you yourself. It just is your life. Does that make sense? Does that seem hard to... I think it's obvious when we look at it, but it's hard to describe. Or it sounds like he says here, you might think this is something that's going to happen later. Like you'll become one with everything later if you do this thing right. As opposed to just open your eyes. Everything that's here is your own life. And a way to access that is by forgetting all of the things we think about what's here. So he says, when you practice forgetting yourself, forgetting where you are and how long you have been here, is a good practice to do right now, actually. When you practice forgetting yourself, forgetting where you are and how long you have been here, then your practice includes everything. When you say, I practice at Houston Zen Center, I and Zen Center are extra. You are limiting your practice by the idea of Zen Center or my practice. When you forget all about those kinds of ideas and just sit, at that time your zazen is perfect and includes everything. That is the point of practice. To just be yourself, that is this intimacy with everything that's here. And letting that be the ground of our doing good in the world, supporting each other. One of the images, he tells a funny story about this, where one of his teachers, when he was a young boy, was sent on this temple. Anyway, it's a funny story. He's sent on an errand. He gets distracted by some posters of some acrobats, this little temple kid, And then he's late, and he's frazzled. And he gets the thing from the shop, but then he realizes he left his hat in the shop. So he runs back to the shop and says, give him my hat. And they have this exchange with the shopkeeper, who finally says, you're wearing your hat. You're wearing your hat. And I think we can all relate, It's kind of like, where's my glasses? Where's my glasses? Or my son says it's like looking for your phone with your phone flashlight. Yeah. I have to go. Where's my phone? I have to go. Right here. So when we're looking we realize the importance of doing good in the world, of like how desperately the world needs our love and support and compassion and healing. And so it's like, wow, this is really important that I live this kind of moral, upright, harmonious life. And now oh no, how am I going to do that? Where am I going to find that, So then we're looking out for what are the rules? Maybe Buddhism. And it's like, okay, you're wearing it. It's your nature. It is your loving heart, which is already there. It's the intimacy that you already have with everything that is in this life with you. Look to that. Don't look outside. But then even in Buddhism, the rules, when it looks like a list of rules, it looks like something that you're doing from outside. Instead of, no, the point is the precepts are your hat. You already have them. And if you want to follow them, don't look outside and try to conform to the rules. Look to how to recover your alignment with your innately loving heart. He says, the precepts are there. Buddha did not come up with the precepts. The precepts were there before there was Buddha. Precepts are our nature. This is I've been working on this book for a long time, and these kinds of teachings just get deeper and deeper. This harmony and love and refraining from evil is actually what our nature is. I was sharing this, and a friend told this very powerful story about being a little kid. Maybe some of you can relate to this. So she's this little kid at school, and she made friends with another little girl, and wanted to go over. The friend said, do you want to come over to my house? And she said, yeah, I'd love to. She said, okay, well, let me check with my mom. The friend said, let me check with my mom, and then I'll let you know. So then she came back and she said, what church do you go to? And then my friend said, we don't go to church. So the friend was like, okay, hold on. I've definitely got to check with my mom. So she checked with her mom, and then she came back and she said, I'm sorry, you can't come over to our house. And my friend said, why not? And her friend said, Because how do you know how to be good? How do you know how to be good if you don't go to church? Like, we can't trust that you know how to be good. And this little girl, my friend, said something like, I don't know if she said it or just felt it, but even hearing her tell the story was so powerful. Like, but I know how to be good. I don't need a book to tell me how to be good. I know how to be good. I thought that was so beautiful. That's what that means. The precepts are our nature. You know, in this fascicle of Dogen, it says, even a 3-year-old knows this. And then Dogen says, and the 3-year-old can embody it too. The little kid knows how to be good. Can we remember that we know how, that we know? And then we're distracted by the should. The point isn't to conform with the should. The point is to recover our nature. So part of what Suzuki Roshi pushes against is he really doesn't like that kind of moralism or kind of like, moralism or kind of dogmatism or moral rules. He feels like moral rules are kind of a distraction. You're looking to the rules instead of looking at your friend. Like, stop looking at the rules. I want you here with me. Does that make sense? He says, in the realm of moral rules, we have this kind of should. I should do this. I should not do that. In our practice, the feeling is more like, I want to, or I can't help but to. When our friend, or our child is suffering, it's not like, oh, I should be kind to them, right? I should be kind to them is kind of a distraction. It's like, I want to be kind to them. A couple days ago, I was in Austin, and I was coordinating with a friend for some kind of activity together in Austin, and she had put in my phone number wrong. So there's somebody in the world that has my phone number except for one digit is different. And this person, she was texting them about kind of our plans. And this person kind of like started to be really cruel to her. It was so troubling, It was such a kind of like violation, and it was just so cruel and pointless, They were sort of like, yeah, it's Jiryu, like, and then you can picture this, right? Somebody just kind of trolling, just being cruel and stringing her along in this email. It's like, no, it's me, Jiryu, but then saying mean things. And isn't that mean? So the first kind of feeling might be like, people need manners. Are you like, come on. This person should be refraining from evil. That's bad. You shouldn't do that. You've got to learn manners. So that's the top layer. But really, it's like, the real question is like, where's your heart? How are you with your heart? Do you know what I mean? So to say like, you should have manners is totally missing the point. It's not like, oh, it's good for you to like conform to our expectations of how to behave together. The point is like, we sense that you are not in alignment with your nature. I actually know nothing about you except your phone number, and that it's very close to my own. But I know that you're not in alignment with your actual heart. I know that actually you love me, and you love this person that you're texting with, and you've let yourself get alienated from that. So I don't really care like that you do these rules that we have about how to text. It's like, can we recover our heart? Does that make sense? But then, so even if we kind of believe this or feel this way, we take up the rules of Buddhism, or we hear Dogen Zenji say, refrain from evil, and we might not hear it as a call back to our own heart, back to our Zazen practice. We might feel it as, oh right, I'm supposed to be doing something that someone said I should do to be good, as opposed to they're trying to remind me. that basically I love everything and everyone and just long to support everything because it's not two things. So maybe just I'll close with another piece from here. The point is, for Suzuki Roshi, the ground of our precept practice is to stay in this, to learn how to be intimate with things, and to stay in that intimacy, or you could say oneness, to stay intimate, and then trust that. But we can't be so sure like what we're going to do or what's going to happen or what that is. And he uses this wonderful image, which is, he says there's a Japanese expression that you can't draw water with a basket. Right? You want to scoop up some water, so you put the basket in, got some water, you try to take it out, and then you don't have any water in the basket. So that's like a problem. We might think we need a better bowl than this to get the water out. But he says actually the way that we handle this problem is we just keep the basket in the water. And when you keep the basket in the water, it's doing fine holding the water. The problem, but you can't take it anywhere. You can't know it. You can't have it, but you can stay in it. That's, I think, a very deep and powerful image of this kind of intimacy. You can't separate from the thing and then know anything about it, but you can stay in it and then know how to trust it as the ground of your action. So I sort of think of precepts now, like the kind of clunky way to do precepts is like, okay, I'm in this intimacy, I'm separating from the intimacy, I'm over here, you're over there, we do not have the same life. And now the precepts are going to help me heal that separation. If I follow these rules, then I'll be more, it's like a bridge. But wouldn't it be better to just keep the basket in the water and stay intimate? But then we don't get to know. We don't get to be as sure of ourselves. That's the downside. If you take the thing out of the basket, you really know what's in the basket. The problem is what's in the basket wasn't what was there in the water. Okay, one last piece I'll close with. So I think Suzuki Roshi, when my English wasn't good enough to read Alan Watts' book on Zen, he expressed its point to me like this: when a stone is completely a stone, that is a real stone. That is how he put our Zen into words. When a stone is completely a stone, that is, when a stone is completely a stone through and through, that is really a stone. Not only is it really a stone, but when it is really a stone, it includes everything. When the stone is really a stone, it cannot be picked up by anyone. When it is not a stone, someone may pick it up. But when it's really a stone, no one can. No one can do anything with it. When a stone is really a stone, even if you think you are picking it up, you cannot. It is part of the universe, and you cannot pick up the whole universe. To pick up that stone or to pick up the whole universe, you would be outside of the universe. You would be a ghost. Nothing exists outside of the universe. All that exists is within the universe. To think that you can pick up a stone is a big delusion. To think that we're separate from the world and acting on it as a separate thing it's like to be a ghost, thinking we can move stones around. To be in it, we're in it with everything. We can't do anything to it. That's that intimacy. The way to receive precepts, the way to refrain from evil, is to understand this point and sit zazen. That is the only way to observe perfect precepts. There's no other way to observe the precepts. We are not interested in explaining the 250 or more precepts because the point is not to observe those precepts one by one, one after another. The point is to learn how to be yourself how to be a person in the way that a stone is completely a stone. When you are just a person, you will have the complete precepts. Even if you keep all of the many written precepts, you may not be completely a person. The best way to observe precepts is just to be you yourself, and then the precepts are always with you. In short, to be yourself is the purpose of our practice and is the way to keep the Buddha's precepts. When a stone is really a stone, even if you think you are picking it up, you cannot. Thank you so much for your kind attention, sharing the feeling together this morning. May it be of benefit.